This is Phebe-Ann Wolframe, the Publicity RA for McMaster English and Cultural Studies, and I'm talking today with Devon Mordell, Instructional Designer, Educational Technologies at McMaster, and this is part of our non-academic jobs blog interview series. Devon graduated from McMaster English and Cultural Studies CSCT program in 2008, and I'm very pleased to be able to talk to Devon today about her job. So, hi Devon! So the first question I just wanted to ask you is, you have this excellent job title, and I wanted to know what exactly an instructional designer does, or what your job involves on kind of a day-to-day basis.
I think it's like one of those amorphous job titles where it doesn't, like, it's really hard to say that two instructional designers do the same thing, but my particular role is in like instructional design, but within educational technologies and within faculty development. So it's like pretty specific, and yet you do a whole bunch of different things. So a lot of what I do is like develop and teach workshops in sort of multimedia and educational technologies, and I'll create sort of learning resources. I'll work with faculty and staff, so mostly working with faculty and staff in the university rather than students. And sort of, consulting on the use of educational technologies, and so doing like all kinds of different things in a day and doing research. It's pretty like always something different.
In that way, it sounds somewhat similar to other sorts of academic jobs where you're doing a lot of different research and teaching and meetings and so. Yeah. So, how did you end up in this job? What attracted you to this particular job? And how did you find this job?
It kind of found me, I guess. Like I didn't really. It never really occurred to me to do this job, and it was more doing something else in the meantime. So right after the MA, I'd actually meant to go on to do a library science degree. So I was thinking about going into sort of like educational media librarianship in a way, or something like that, or media librarianship. But I was like totally pooped after. I was like, no more school after the MA. So I ended up just working as an RA for one of my supervisors, and then from that, because I was kind of around, there was a job that had come up that was similar to this one, in that it was working with faculty and working with technology. So I kind of got in there and was like, whoa, this I think is probably what I want to do, is faculty development work around working with technology and teaching. So once I was in the one position, it sort of opened up other opportunities to do other things. So eventually I kind of landed here as well. But I'm like, oh, it just happened. But in the meantime, I'd also done sort of web design diploma as well. So I have a multimedia background, but I hadn't really touched that for a while. So that was just kind of to rebuild up those skills.
Build on what you had. And that's really important that sort of a temporary position ended up growing into something else more long term, but also drawing on previous skills you had before your MA. So I was going to ask you what kind of previous work experience you had, and you said you'd done some multimedia and you had a temporary position. Was there anything else, either paid or unpaid experience, that you felt helped you secure this job, or has helped you as you proceed in this career?
Well, directly before the MA, I actually was working at a public art gallery as a community artist, which was also a very cool job. And that's kind of what led me to take the MA, was because I was interested in curatorial work. Another change of plans, I guess. But yeah, so that there was definitely aspects of that, like the adult education aspect, I was working with multimedia there as well, but I couldn't necessarily, like, it definitely informed what I do now, but I couldn't necessarily sort of jumping from that position into this one. Like, there was definitely, it helped me get this job, but there was definitely that interim stuff that was probably more helpful. But yeah.
Yeah. So you had quite a range of experience, though, and different kinds of things, and and I guess sometimes it can be surprising how things you do at one time may relate to things you'll do later that you hadn't even considered.
Yeah, like it totally was this intersection of these things. Like I love working with multimedia. I love working or teaching. So it sort of was like this coming together of all these interests or this culmination. But yeah, definitely representing like a pretty wide range of things to have done before.
So yeah. What do you like most about your job? Your job as an instructional designer?
There's actually a lot to like about it. It's a really stimulating environment to be in. So there's just, tons of sort of neat challenges to address all the time. There's lots of opportunities to learn, but not in a way where you feel kind of inept. Like you're sort of building on this core of knowledge and feeling more and more competent at what you're doing. But there is always, like, educational technologies as a field is obviously always changing. So it really is pretty, different from day to day. And I like that in this role there's quite a bit of autonomy to sort of pursue my own research interests, not so much within my field of study as the MA, but certainly within the scope of my job there is autonomy there. So that's pretty awesome.
That's good to have that flexibility.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there are definitely some perks to the job that you're working, some positives, but every job has challenges. Can you talk about what some of those might be?
There definitely are challenges, and I guess the biggest one probably sounds kind of like a jerky thing to say because it's like, is that really a challenge? But I think as a career, it's sort of intellectually pretty exhausting. So as much as it's neat to be doing something that's really stimulating and interesting during the day, you kind of come home and you're like, I just want to play video games. Like you just don't really. Whereas I kind of before starting to sort of go into the working world, I was like, I'll work, but I'll also have this kind of independent research practice more in keeping with what I'd studied in my MA. And it didn't really last that long when I started working sort of full-time. And I find that there isn't a lot of space for like creative work. Like again, because I'm doing creative things at work, but it's not sort of my creative stuff, then you end up really kind of putting all your energy into that. And, at the same time, it's like, oh, I guess you're complaining about that because you get to do really interesting creative things. But yeah, that's just kind of what ends up happening. It doesn't leave you with a lot for your own stuff.
That's something important to remember because I think a lot of us, if we're considering maybe transitioning out of academia into other kinds of careers, one of the reasons some people may have for that is I'd like more time to do my creative things or intellectual things as a hobby, but I feel like my academic work takes up all of that energy. And so it's important to remember that even if you're doing not a job as a professor, you're not in the tenure track position, there are lots of other kinds of jobs that could similarly use that creative energy, and to think about ways to either divide it up somehow, or if that's not possible for you, to decide whether you want to do a job that takes that creative energy or not. But in your case, it sounds like there's two sides to it.
Definitely.
Great. So speaking of academic work, I was wondering if you could speak a bit to how your time in academic research as an MA student, your post-secondary education, helps at all in your current work?
It's hard to make like a super easy sort of connection there because it is somewhat different from the work that I do now, but I think it's more of those meta skills that are almost hard to describe. But I would say that fact of sort of synthesizing things together, the creative problem solving that comes through doing your MA, that fact of sort of iterating an idea and refining it, like these are skills that employers find really valuable, but I guess you have to be able to sort of say that that's what you can do really well. But I think that that really really helped me, and the research and the writing, but that's sort of common to a lot of obviously academic programs. But I think, yeah, just the way that you need to think for cultural studies in English, it just really does demand that sort of creativity with the way you approach certain ideas. So yeah, it definitely helped. It's just, like I said, it's hard to say, like, oh, well, like obviously the web design diploma, it's pretty clear that, yeah.
But I mean, it's often not straightforward, but what's important is to think about ways in which that knowledge translation or skill translation can happen from what we do in academic programs at the graduate level to what we might do in eclectic variety of different kinds of careers, right? So I appreciate you making that connection, that it's not a straightforward A to B relationship, but there is some benefit to those skills that you honed in your MA. So
yeah, and I hope it does help me sort of pursue my particular field in like a more critical and sometimes ethical way that I might have as well. So asking questions that you would ask typically in a sort of critical theory type way.
That's also important. So my last question for you is just whether you have any advice for fellow MA graduates or PhD graduates who might be interested in working in your field.
I definitely, like, in this field specifically, I think there will be a lot of opportunities as soon as as soon as institutions start to recognize the importance, especially as education starts to move more to an online context. Then I'm not so like, oh yeah, great, it's going there, but it does seem like the way a lot of institutions are thinking, that they're trying to head in that direction. So it is important to have people in that role that can kind of guide that in a way that's, again, ethical and pedagogically sound. So I would say, in terms of advice, to just keep your options open, and sort of, if you can get into an area where it looks like there is growth, that's great. That's probably the most unspecific and unhelpful feedback, but certainly this particular field does demand now a degree of skills in sort of digital fluencies. So things like being able to, like, just basic, but having an understanding of how web pages work. So knowing some HTML, knowing some audio editing, some video editing. I do a lot of graphic design, so these types of skills that just have like a working knowledge of how to do that. So I think it's helpful in a lot of ways. I think when we were talking with John when he was visiting, just mentioning, even he was looking at, I think, some writing positions, and how even it was necessary in those cases to have a bit of some HTML knowledge. So it does seem to sort of insinuate itself into a lot of different roles. But yeah, and yeah, just it's like I said, it's probably not that helpful in the way of advice, but it seems as though there's just a huge amount of jobs that are kind of appearing that you would never expect. Like, again, I wouldn't have necessarily thought to do this job. So it's just keeping an eye out on things you like doing. So identifying the things that you want to do, and then trying to find something that meets that, or even being very entrepreneurial. Like my colleagues in the MA were some of the smartest people I know. So I'm just like, you'll find a job because you will find a way. So yeah, again, not that helpful.
Yeah. But I think everyone will appreciate that note of encouragement, that what we have a lot as educated folks and smart folks to bring to the table, and it's a matter of sort of looking at those job postings and seeing what you might be able to bring to that position, and also thinking of, as in your case, previous experiences, and how you may recycle those or fit them in with new things that you've learned, or build on those skills, or add new things to your set of skills, maybe taking a web design course or other courses related to digital media, or building instructional materials of different kinds. So that's all good advice, is to both value what you have, your existing skill set, but be able to build on them as well. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, Devon, and it was great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too, Phoebe. Bye. Yeah.
Bye.